Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakachaja Satara Sata Shri Shriman The Divine Grace of Bhaktivinoda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jaya Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakachaja Satara Sata Shri Shriman The Divine Grace of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. So first we'll read from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita. This is volume 6, chapter entitled Chant Hare Krishna and Fight. Nothing like a garland from the refrigerator. Wake you up, refresh you. Certain managerial affairs. We'll recap. When in ISKCON Bombay, Pujari wanted to know if some Shalagram Shilas were bona fide, Srila Prabhupada agreed to see them, confirmed that they were genuine, and advised how they should be worshipped. This is 1977. Certain managerial affairs Prabhupada would try to avoid, although often to no avail, such as concerning the delays in completing the construction work at Bombay. He could hear the sounds of the work, and sometimes it was noisy, but it was the slowness that perturbed him. Sometimes he would sit silently for hours and then remark to his servant or secretary that he was very upset by the construction delays. You are sincere workers, Prabhupada told the devotees in charge, but no intelligence. I can see that this construction work is not going on. Am I to close my eyes? I can do that, but I am a sensible man. How can I close my eyes? They are all giving their excuses. Srila Prabhupada analyzed the different leaders and on finding defects in each of them, concluded that they were incompetent to speed up the construction. When Tamal Krishna suggested that maybe they should consult a life member who is expert in construction, Prabhupada approved. So Mr. Mohata, an engineer and life member, was brought to see Srila Prabhupada. At that time, the construction company was demanding that all the past bills be paid before they would go on with the work. But Srila Prabhupada said he wouldn't pay any more bills until the work was completed. Then all bills would be paid in full. Although some of the devotees were more inclined to pay the company right away, at least partially, so that the work would go on smoothly, Mr. Mohat at once appreciated Prabhupada's reasoning and began dealing with the construction company on that basis. He got results, and Prabhupada was relieved. Thus, although Prabhupada was eager to retire fully, he did not feel he could remove himself from ISKCON management yet. Srila Prabhupada had no regular doctor. From time to time, a Kaviraj might show up to give a diagnosis and some medicine, but Prabhupada wouldn't take it very seriously. He didn't consider these Kavirajs very qualified, and if the medicine tasted bitter or produced any bad effect, he would stop taking it. Everything was up to Krishna, and a doctor couldn't change that. Prabhupada mentioned the relative merits of Ayurvedic and homeopathic medicines, but like any other mundane topic, medicine was something he showed little interest in, even though Srila Prabhupada was a chemist, a pharmacist. He began having a newspaper read to him. Much of the news dealt with the downfall of the Congress Party and the reform promises of the Janata Party. From time to time, Prabhupada would comment, "These rascals, wherever they go, they create trouble." One time he commented, "Manda sumanda matayo." They have got a conception which is very, very bad. Their religious, social, and political conceptions are all condemned. Prabhupada's conclusion, what the fools and rascals are doing, that is the newspapers. Prabhupada directed Tamal Krishna and others to write letters and articles replying to some of the news stories. In one news editorial, the writer criticized formal education as corrupting the minds of children. Educationists and researchers, the writers urged, should look into the question and suggest remedies. Srila Prabhupada replied, "That means the rascals do not know that godlessness and godless education will be like that. The teachers who are suggesting they are themselves bad and they are leading, they do not know what is the defect. You can write to them. You leaders, you do not know what is the cause. This is the cause. Harava bhaktasya kuto mahad guna manoratena asati davato bihi." Without God consciousness, there cannot be any education. There cannot be any good qualities. You do not know this, and you are simply crying in the wilderness. All the education and its propaganda is to make the world godless. Although the most scientific knowledge of God is there in the Bhagavad Gita, write him, give him a slap. You do not know. Srila Prabhupada ki. Prabhupada is expert and analyzing. He saw right through all this nonsense and realized that what the education is trying to do is trying to make people godless. And still today, and you see the results of that. And the world has no direction. Wars, famine, all these things come about due to godless civilization, right? There's no other situation. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 12, creation of the Kumaras and others, texts 1 and 2. Is that correct, Bhakti Jimmy? Bhakti Jimmy knows everything. I'll read text 1 and then we'll chant text 2. Maitreya vacha iti te vanitak satak kalakya paramatmanaha mahima vidagavata yutasrakshin nibodhame. Sri Maitreya said, "O learned Vidura, so far I have explained to you the glories of the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and its feature of Kala. Now you can hear from me about the creation of Brahma, the reservoir of all Vedic knowledge." Text 2. Sasara jagrand andak tamishram, sasara jagrand tamishram, attatamishramaadikrit, mahamohang chamohang cha, tamascha jnana vrittaya, Sasarjagren Sasarjeng Datamishra Tamishra Sasarjagren Datamishram Sasarjagren Datamishram Atatamishramadikrit Mamohang Chamohang Cha Tamasjagana Vrittaya. Please chant. Sasajagren Dattamishram Attatamishamadikrit Mamohang Chamohang Cha Tamasjagana Vrittaya. Devada. Sasajagren Dattamishram Attatamishamadikrit Mahamohang Chamohang Cha Tamasjagana Vrittaya. Devada Maraji. Sasajagren Dattamishram Attatamishamadikrit Mahamohang Chamohang Cha Tamasjagana Vrittaya. Anyone else? Sasaja created Agre at first Andaktamishram the sense of death Ata then Tamishram anger upon frustration Adikrit all these Mahamoham ownership of enjoyable objects Cha also Moham illusory conception Cha also Tamak darkness in self-knowledge Cha as well as Agyana nescience Pratyaya engagements. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Brahma first created the nescient engagements like self-deception, the sense of death, anger after frustration, the sense of false ownership, and the illusory bodily conception or forgetfulness of one's real identity. Purport. Before the factual creation of the living entities in different varieties of species, the conditions under which a living being in the material world has to live were created by Brahma. Unless a living entity forgets his real identity, it is impossible for him to live in the material conditions of life. Therefore, the first condition of material existence is forgetfulness of one's real identity. And by forgetting one's real identity, one is sure to be afraid of death. Although a pure living soul is deathless and birthless, this false identification with material nature is the cause of false ownership of things which are offered by the arrangement of superior control. All material resources are offered to the living entity for his peaceful living and for the discharge of the duties of self-realization in conditioned life. But due to false identification, the conditioned soul becomes entrapped by the sense of false ownership of the property of the Supreme Lord. It is evident from this verse that Brahma himself is a creation of the Supreme Lord, and the five kinds of nescience which condition the living entities in material existence are creations of Brahma. It is simply ludicrous to think that the living entity to be equal with the Supreme Being, when one can understand that the conditioned souls are under the influence of Brahma's magic wand. Patanjali also accepts that there are five kinds of nescience as mentioned herein. Om Jnana Tamrandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshuramatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Mankaite Grim Yakiptamam Bande Shri Gurum Deda. Translation again. Brahma first created the nascent engagements like self-deception, the sense of death, anger after frustration, the sense of false ownership, and the illusory bodily conception or forgetfulness of one's real identity. This is an interesting picture that being given here in the Bhagavatam, how everything is arranged for the living entity to enter into illusion immediately upon appearing through whatever source. This, of course, we understand how each living entity is conditioned even prior to his manifestation due to his previous material circumstances. The somehow or other, even in the mundane or sub-religious conception, they have no real way to rationalize why one person is born, as they say, with a silver spoon in his mouth, or why one person is born in very poverty-stricken conditions, or some other, what they say, congenital defect. You know, we look at this disparity. And so their attempt to neutralize this bad karma comes in the form of what they call christening in the Christian philosophy. Christening. That they understand everyone is born with what they call original sin. This is a concept in Roman Catholicism, which is very elaborate. They understand that a person, to take birth, to be in whatever condition he can, he must have some karma, but they don't call it as such. They trace it back to their biblical origins and say that there is some defect, how the living entity is born in the first place and why he is burdened, and how he can only become clean through their process of purification. In this way, they capture living entities according to their limited concept of religion. But here we see that these things are all created by the Creator himself. And that according to one's past, we saw, what is that verse we were reading yesterday? Quoted, Matirna Krishna Paratak Svatova, Matobi Padyeti Grihavitanam, Adanta Gobir, Vishatam Tamisham, Punak Punas Chavata Chavananam. That this, we also see here, that this darkness, this Adanta Gobir, this is not some accident. People have this concept of bad luck, good luck, when there's really no such thing. This is the result of one's past pious or impious activities. But they don't know, so they give some name, bad luck. It was bad luck for him to be born with no arms and legs. Right? Such babies were there due to the parents taking some chemical. In the 1960s, it was very famous. They were giving to these women thalidomide, a very heavy drug. And ostensibly it was to prevent some side effects due to pregnancy and other things. And what was happening as these babies were being born without arms and legs. Who can imagine? How demonic. And it was a big scandal, but the scientists, they excused themselves. Oh, it's not our fault. Of course it's their fault, but at the same time, it's not their fault because that living entity that took birth in that womb was meant to take birth in that womb and to be born in that distress condition. And no holy water is going to change that. The Christians, they give that holy water, supposedly. That doesn't change the situation. So the only thing that separates the so-called civilized from the uncivilized is knowledge. And Prabhupada defines knowledge in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita and the purport, the verses 4 and 5, as understanding the difference between spirit and matter. And ultimately between the living soul and the dead body. So that's there. And intelligence, he defines intelligence as being able to understand things in their proper perspective. So this is key in everything. Anyone who's reading, everyone has their Atmavan Manyate Jagat. Everyone is seeing things through his own mind. And of course, the mind is just an imperfect instrument. If it is not, it's like random data or data, depending on how you pronounce it. It's all collected in the memory bank of the computer, but it has no meaning unless it can be sorted. And then you can gain some useful information from it. So the mind is also like that. It is just randomly collecting information. And you see some persons, their minds can't contain this imperfect information, and they become bipolar, schizophrenic, and other things, because they can't understand this. It's all coming too quickly, and their intelligence can't deal with it for whatever reason, due to misuse of the material body for unrealistic sense expectations. It was like when, in the early days, devotees would ask Prabhupada some very foolish things like, can you take LSD to get some higher understanding? But no material thing can solve a spiritual problem. But somehow or other, they were, this was their culture at the time. Fortunately, many of them became devotees and were saved without, having to undergo another birth in some abominable situation. So this, but this darkness, you see here, this self-deception, the sense of death, anger after frustration, the sense of false ownership, and the illusory bodily conception, these are all programmed that as soon as one comes into the material world, he is immediately captured by these issues, extra baggage, original sin, as the Christians say. You cannot escape it. Everyone is born with this. And it's only by this Om Jnana Timirandasya Ganana Shalakaya, without coming in contact with the bona fide spiritual master, one is doomed actually to suffer repeated birth and death. This is the verdict that Tadvidi Pranipatena Pariprasnena Sevaya Upadekshanti Te Gyanam Gyaninas Tattvadarshana. Only that self-realized spiritual master can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. This is the key. Everyone is searching, but no one has the eyes to see. And not this physical seeing, but we have this innate ability. This is the benefit. Everyone is born with this potential, because the super soul is there within the heart, with every living entity, from the Indra Gopa up to Lord Indra. Who can imagine that even in the lowest form of life, Indra Gopa, the germ cellular level, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead accompanies the jiva in all of these journeys, trials, and travails. This is the meaning of the dearmost friend. In the material world, people have friends. If they come into some difficulty, immediately that friend is gone. This is how one knows who his real friends are. Chanakya Pandit has elaborated, on this regard. Who are one's real friends? But there is no greater friend. Sarvasya chaham riddhi sanivishtom ataksmati aganam apavanam cha. And at the right time, Krishna will manifest himself as this ability to understand. Vedeshcha sarvaham eva vedya. Not without some effort, some endeavor. It doesn't come, everything is by Krishna's grace, obviously, and by the mercy of the spiritual master. Brahmanda Brahmate Kona Bhagavanji, Guru Krishna, Kripai Bhakti Latibit. Automatically, then that seed which is there becomes watered. And if one keeps watering it, ultimately it will fructify. But it takes the patient to take shashva, utsahanishya darya tat tat karma pravartana. This firm faith, conviction, patience. These things have to be there. There's no room for impatience in the process of self-realization. Prabhupada used the analogy of a woman who's pregnant or who expects to receive a child after being married. It doesn't happen immediately. She has to wait 9 months. What to speak, how many births we've taken. And impatience will not assist us in this very measured endeavor. Something so valuable cannot be rushed. It's a very careful attention to detail. Prabhupada used that razor's edge analogy. Just a little mistake and blood will be there. So spiritual life is like that. Not that we walk around thinking that at any moment my spiritual life will be finished because of some mistake. No. Krishna is not some foolish person like us. Because he's within our heart, he understands our actual mood and mentality. And any little mistake is not taken seriously. Repeated mistakes, that's a different story. It's no longer a mistake then. Right? Then it becomes to the level of aparad, offense. Cannot do the same thing repeatedly and say, I made a mistake. That doesn't work in the material realm, and it doesn't work in the spiritual realm. Cannot have a commander on the battlefield say, I made a mistake and we lost the battle or the initiative or 10,000 men, and expect that he'll continue on in that role or rank. No. So we have to be a little cautious in this regard. But if we just remain sincere, Prabhupada gave one lecture, but many places and many times he said, but in Mayapur he said that the only requirement for success in spiritual life is sincerity. Because sincerity will overcome all your shortcomings. And Krishna will see from within how a person is actually reacting to these challenges in spiritual life, because there are challenges. But Krishna says, I preserve what you have and I carry what you lack. So we have no reason to fear, even though all these things are there. Self-deception, the sense of death, Everyone has these things. Even devotees experience these things, but they are able to adjust and accommodate them and not become overwhelmed or bewildered by them. But you see, the materialistic man, he's rushing towards death thinking, I have to enjoy as much as I can because I'm going to die. Just the opposite of the spiritualist. And we can see this, practically speaking. Everything around him, whether you want to see it or not, everyone is exposed to it in Kali Yuga. You can't open your phone or your laptop or your television set without being bombarded by this mad rush to death, trying to fill every moment with sense gratification. Every moment. Even the materialists, they have a saying. It says, he wins who dies with the most toys. This is their motto. A person is considered successful if he amassed great wealth and all the latest that the material world has to offer, whether it's technology or sense gratification. Then he was considered successful. Such unimaginable foolishness. It's difficult to conceive. Some people are even buried in their cars. Can you imagine? They don't even use a coffin. They're so attached to their situation that they will be buried in their car. That was their prized possession. They want to take it with them. They want anyone else to enjoy it. Such is the level of foolishness that these things not just happen once or twice, but so many times, repeatedly. This is that Andanta Gobya Vishtatam Tamisham Punak Punas Chavata Chavananam. This repeated chewing and chewed. And we know about this analogy, unless you've been to India. I remember the first time we went to India and saw this taking place. You see the sugar cane, wala, he grinding his sugar cane. And he puts it through, not once, twice, 3 times. Get every little bit dry. So there's nothing left in this husk. And he tosses it to the side. But immediately some animal comes, cow, ass, whatever. And they try to chew and extract, because within that husk, there's a promise of enjoyment. The enjoyment is no longer there, but the object itself represents a promise of enjoyment. When it was full, before being crushed, it had some juice. But now the juice is no longer there. So our material life is like that. People are trying and trying. They have one wife, they divorce, they have another wife, they divorce, they have another wife. This is chewing the chew. There's nothing different. Gold pot, iron pot. Right? This is that story. Lakahira. When he achieved, he thought, I have achieved by whatever Krishna's arrangement. Actually, it was by his wife's arrangement. But this is a foolish person. Who can imagine? This person is a leper. And he goes to this prostitute's house, who can only be purchased by 100,000 diamonds. But his wife was a maidservant who was able to ingratiate herself to this famous prostitute. So she didn't have to pay the 100,000 diamonds. And she arranged for her husband to go. But the prostitute is not ordinary personalities like we see on the streets, formerly on Times Square and other places, Port Authority bus terminal. So she very expertly arranged that every preparation would be made and put into 2 separate containers, one gold, one iron. But it's the same preparation. And then she asked him, do you taste any difference? And he said, no. And then she looked at him and said, so then why are you here? Yeah. It's all the same. Sex is sex. Gold pot, iron pot, whether it's with your wife or with me, it's the same. But we're thinking it's different. And therefore, there's this bewilderment, this madness. The whole world is propelled by this madness. And they cannot escape by their own efforts. That's the key. That's that verse, Matirna Krishna. Not by joint conference. Not by joint conference. So they are very unfortunate to be in that situation. And therefore, our responsibility is to take this message of Godhead and deliver it so that we can free them from this cycle of birth and death. Otherwise, there is no way. We understand now how, seeing how Brahma created this situation. And how can, and it is so perfect. This is a jail without bars. When there's a jail with bars, it's like in the military. They train you in many ways, and they indoctrinate you essentially that your duty, if you are captured, is to escape. That is your duty. Every person taken as a prisoner of war, his duty is to escape. And they have very elaborate arrangements, big camps and guards and towers and lights. Very difficult to escape. But it is their duty, and they will tunnel underground and they will find some way. And many successful escapes were there. But here in the material world, this whole, and Durga means what? Durga means jail. Jailhouse. The warden and the jailhouse. It's the same. It's so perfectly arranged that you do not know that you are in jail. And so therefore you have no impetus to escape. This is the illusion. You're thinking everything is here, it's fine, it's all fine. But birth, death, old age, and disease are your constant companions. So how is everything fine? But they don't realize that. If I give you death as your companion, will you think everything is okay? I'll say, now they're afraid. You have to walk around, with mask or vaccine, because everyone thinks, wow, oh, this person can kill me. So if I tell you, okay, go in this room with this person, he has COVID-19, you stay there with him, okay? And they'll say, no, of course not. Because they understand, no, this person, this is death. But they don't understand that death is all around, built in. We just finished this chapter. What was that? Very nicely. The calculation of time from the atom. Everyone, at the time of his birth, his death. For one who is born, death is certain. For one who has died, birth is certain. Yeah. The Bhagavad Gita gives us very clear, but people are not realizing this. But when it appears to them externally, they think, oh yes, now death is here in the form of this person not wearing a mask or not being vaccinated, like that. For your job or work, one has to maybe take some precaution. But in general, we can understand that death is everywhere, all around. It doesn't matter whether you're in the most sanitary situation or not. More people die in hospitals than any place else. Why? Not just because they died on the operating table, because it is filled with infection, regardless of the situation. This is what happens. It's not nice, but it's reality. It's real reality. You cannot stop death any more than you can stop birth. And we try to make all arrangements, but yet people all the time, you read it, just today, he died suddenly. He was only 28. He was only 32. What does that mean, he died suddenly? Because they don't know what is the actual cause. Everyone can die. So whether you're 99.9, your death is certain. Whether you're 28, your death is certain. It doesn't matter that no guarantee that you're going to die when you're 99 or 100 or 110. There's no guarantee. They say like that. What are they? The karmis, they say karma What do they say? They have a license plate so that it's not vulgarized. They say karma is a beach, B-E-A-C-H. You know, everyone knows. It's not that they don't know. We just simply have to get the book into their hands. You know, they're looking. Everyone is wanting this knowledge. We have to understand how we wanted it. We didn't understand exactly, but we had questions. You know, I meet so many people, they're suffering, and they care less, so they're engaged in all types of abominable activity. And when they're questioned, why do you do this? They say, well, I didn't ask to be born, and I'm just going to do whatever I want. Whether it's any type of criminal activity or any type of drug, that's their justification. I didn't ask to be born. You know, so they just need to be guided properly. Because what is that? When someone says like that, anger after frustration. They're so angry, they're so frustrated, and it's a complete loop, a never-ending vicious cycle. And everyone is always frustrated because, I mean, and the Bhagavad Gita has the answer. Bhoktaram jagnatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram. Suridam sarvadam. Everything is there. Gyatva mam shantam richati. You can get peace, but you have to know who is the proprietor. And if you're trying through your own means to accumulate that which is, in one sense, not yours, to take or even to own, you cannot own happiness. Imagine if somebody could just try to sell you happiness. People do it all the time. That's the whole key about a salesperson. They're trying to sell you happiness. They're not trying to sell you a car. They're trying to sell you the happiness that goes along with owning a car. You're going to be so respected. You have this nice vehicle. Everyone's going to, you know, look at you and be envious. And so they're selling all these things. But they're not selling you a car. They're selling you what they think will make you happy. So this obviously is like Brahma's, Prabhupada uses that term here, Brahma's magic wand. You know, who is that, what do they call it? Hypnotist. So everyone comes into the mirror world and we are hypnotized. We're hypnotized to accept that I have to die, or that I have to suffer, or that I have to struggle very hard in order to achieve anything. When actually all I have to do is live simply and think in a more intelligent way. And Prabhupada encapsulated that, simple living, high thinking. And everything is there within that formula. Even in the most complicated situation, one can still have simple living, even in the middle of Brooklyn, New York. The devotees here are performing this simple living and high thinking. They're not excessively, they're not atyahara priyasas japa japa niyamagra. They're understanding that there's no benefit to over collecting or over endeavoring. And what is that Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma, that na sochati na kankshati. You get something nice and then you're afraid you'll lose it. And then you lose it and then you're suffering again. You know, whether it's your very nice phone or your nice wireless headset or your laptop, you know, these things are always there. As soon as you lose it, suffering. So much anxiety, so much frustration. And then anger. You know, I have to leave here. I can't live here. You know, my material possessions are not safe. So this is the situation. And people are locking themselves up in apartments, and every day, you know, we have very nice security system ring. There's no security. After the fact, it records the transaction that Someone came on my porch and stole my packages. So the security doesn't stop them from stealing it, but it records the act. And so then they're even more frustrated that they see the person walking up the steps and stealing the package. It increases the anxiety and the frustration, and they become more angry. So this is the situation here. No one can escape the Lord Brahma's magic wand. No one can escape. People are so much enamored by things like magic, whole, culture of magic. They had that, what is that, Harry Potter? For years, people are reading these books again and again and again and seeing the movies again and again and again because they want to believe in some magic. But the real magic is that, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he can deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. That's the magic. But they will not take to that. Although here it is, we're giving it to them. Here, take this magic. Free yourself. Become free from the hypnosis, the illusion. And then go back home, back to Godhead. Who can give such a promise? Except the pure devotees. Yeah, this is such an excellent process. So pure and sublime. And where people, one thing is they don't understand, they think it's because it's free, therefore it has no value. That's their mistake. Therefore, Prabhupada said that you have to, when you give the book, you have to take something in return. Otherwise, they don't value it. So be careful in your interaction. You're giving the highest knowledge, and that person should just give a little bit of his hard-earned wealth, and then that sacrifice is complete. The arena, all the ingredients, everything has to be there. Yagnai Sankirtana Praya Yajantihi Sumedasaha. Everything has to be there. So we want to stop now and take some questions. We'll read the verse again. Read the two verses again. Sri Maitreya said, O learned Vidura, so far I have explained to you the glories of the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his feature of Kala. Now you can hear from me about the creation of Brahma, the reservoir of all Vedic knowledge. Brahma first created the nescient engagements like self-deception, the sense of death, anger after frustration, the sense of false ownership, and the illusory bodily conception or forgetfulness of one's real identity. Any questions, comments? Arjuna Nanda.
Thank you, Puji, for the nice class. There were many very, very good points. One of them was which you were mentioning about magician, Brahma's wand. So once Sri Prabhupada, I don't know which part of India he was, but a famous and a very prominent magician of India, his name is P.C. Sarkar. He went to Sri Prabhupada and offered his obeisances, and he showed Prabhupada some magic tricks. Then immediately Prabhupada asked him, can you make that magic trick which can convert these hippies into happies? So P.C. Sarkar said, no, that I cannot do. Therefore, I'm offering my obeisances to you. Like that he said. So this is real magic, I was thinking.
They call vibhuti, but it's not vibhuti. Prabhupada said this magic creating some ash. This is not magic. Manipulating material elements is not magic. So he was correct. Making these hippies into happies, that's magic. But again, it's really, the magic is there. We see that to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead side by side with this illusory energy. This is the first stage. One by the mercy of the spiritual master. It is not that the curtain is revealed without paying some price. One has to be sincere. You go to the theater and you sit in the audience, and you can sit in the audience all day. But unless you have paid the fee, unless everyone is satisfied, they don't open the curtain and the show doesn't go on. You don't see the performance. So everything is there behind that curtain, everything. But unless it is parted, one only sees the curtain, Maya, which is blocking his vision of all aspects of spiritual existence. So yeah, this is that jail without bars. So what other, you have
I
another
have
one?
one question. I have one
Yes.
question.
Yeah,
So-
it's not working, by the way, but that's okay.
Hare Krishna.
Now it's working. Close.
So you were mentioning about Punah Punah Charvita Charvananam. So one of the students had asked me, not me, one other devotee, that when devotees speak, they say, "Oh, this material life is Punah Punah Charvita Charvananam." It's all eating, sleeping, mating, depending. So the student was very new, so he got a little frustrated and he asked that I find even spiritual life is Punah Punah Charvita Charvananam. All of you, every day you hear the same thing, you're chanting the same mantra, everything is again same thing. So how
Yeah.
do we differentiate?
Mm.
Is it just bias that you're saying material life is Punah Punah Charvita Charvananam? Or what is the actual, how do we understand this?
You have to tell them the analogy about the sugar cane. So if the repetition of this Punashjavatashanam was real, what's that verse? Nasato vidite bhavo nambavo vidite. The stages? No. What's that? What? The sages have determined that which has no existence, no substance. They've studied the nature of both, right? So they're not studying that people have been having sex since time immemorial, but it has not brought about any satisfaction. Otherwise, why they're changing wives? That's the iron pot, gold pot. And people have accumulated wealth. So all these things, they should see that. So but yet those who have walked this path of self-realization, although it may seem repetitious, they don't understand the process of purification. So one is the process of enslavement, repeated birth and death, and one is the process of liberation. Kirtanareva Krishna Sya Mukta Sangha Siddhaite. But that's just due to a poor fund of knowledge. They don't have the information. So it is our duty to give them good guidance and explain to them that, yes, okay. If you're taking medicine on a regular basis, why? Because the doctor says that it will cure your disease. So this Maha Mantra, this is not material. You don't understand the potency. It's like you're not a doctor. You don't understand the potency of the medicine. You just see it as a pill. You don't know what is its effect, what is it meant to do, why you have to take it for 10 days. You're taking it on the advice of the physician. So in the same way, we understand that this is not from the results we have seen from parampara, evam parampara praptim, that everything is there. Just that we have to have some exposure to real knowledge so that we don't continue to ask the same foolish questions. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu, for your wonderful explanation on this topic. Very realistic. In this verse, it is mentioned that Brahma first created all these material aspects of material life. And then the living entities were made to forget their real identity. And that's how they are afraid of death and so many other things. So should we blame Brahma? That Brahma, why did he create all these aspects of material life so that we are made to forget about real identity? So had he not created, we would have better remember Krishna and enjoy our Krishna conscious life.
Well, I remember one analogy Prabhupada gave. When we transmigrate from one body to another. If one was previously a king, and then he became a dog, and he had memory of that, it would be incompatible. He would not be able to function. So if we understood that we are part and parcel of Krishna, if we were not put into this illusion, then how could we survive in this material world to the point where we can escape, where we can realize what is the nature of this situation? When you're put into the prison, whether it's by Brahma, who creates the facility, or Durga, who manages the facility, everything has its component parts. There has to be the environment in the prison, which is certainly meant for your rehabilitation. And what does that do? When you're in the prison, it means you cannot commit sinful activity, technically. You cannot steal, you cannot murder, you cannot rape, you cannot pillage. So this is supposed to give you some understanding that I'm here to become cured of this bad mentality. But of course, most do not. Most criminals never give up this criminality. But Brahma is creating a situation in such a way that each one of these ingredients has a counterpart. So self-deception has self-realization. The sense of death has liberation. Anger after frustration also has this concomitant ability to recognize that I am not meant to suffer. That incompatibility is there. One asks, why am I suffering? This question has been there since time immemorial. Why am I forced to suffer, even though I don't want to? And philosophers have tried to answer this question. And whole theses and essays and literature is based around this whole concept of who am I? So this idea of forgetfulness of one's real identity, everyone is seeking this answer since time immemorial, and that has led to the process of self-realization. So even though he's giving us this what seems to be some punishment, actually is meant for our rectification. It's actually meant to, in one sense, frustrate us, so we realize that this is not my natural environment. I'm not meant to be here. We have to become free from that. We have to realize. And then we want to escape. Otherwise, we're just kept in this illusion and we don't want to escape. So we have to thank Lord Brahma for giving us this frustration and all these things. Otherwise, we would like, the material world seems to be a very nice place for most people. They're walking around completely in ignorance. And they're thinking everything is fine. Only a few members of the Krishna conscious movement have asked that question, have dared to ask that question. Why is this like this? Why do I have to die? Why am I suffering? So we have to thank Lord Brahma for giving the ingredients that allow us to fully appreciate the nature of the shackles which bind us. Otherwise, we would think, oh, this is very nice. Prabhupada said, right? The hog is thinking that this stool is very nice. It's thinking, I'm enjoying. I'm eating this and I'm enjoying. So how much illusion? And we're meant to see that. All these things are meant for us, for instruction purposes. It's meant for our instruction to see how some of these people are doing the same thing. There's even a definition, clinical definition of insanity. Is doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting a different result. We learn this they even teach this in college, and people still don't realize it. And they're doing the same thing repeatedly. And they're hearing the teacher saying this, but still they don't understand. I'm doing the same thing, punak punaschavata chavana, repeatedly and expecting a different result. Gold pot, iron pot. But so we have to feel compassion for these living entities. We have to get these books out. We have a whole warehouse full of books. We have to move them out and distribute them. Otherwise, individuals like Bhakti Henrik would never come to Krishna consciousness. He would have just stayed in the material world. I'm very happy. So we have to thank Lord Brahma for giving us frustration. Any other questions? Since we're fasting all day and there's no prasadam, I don't feel, compelled that we have to finish right now, but we always do a little maha cleanup in any case, so we can do that a little bit earlier. We can get ready for the guests tonight. We're missing some members, so this whole lobby completely has to be mopped and cleaned with some nice cleaner with a nice scent, right, Dr. Jimmy? So you'll do that now? Go mop and sweep and whatever else needs to be done to greet the guests. The real opportunity for us here is to be able to relate to them according to their current situation. People come in, everybody's not the same. One person is frustrated from one thing, another person is frustrated from another thing. Everyone has questions. And Krishna, and we know it says the Bhagavatam is the answer. This is the conclusion of all. The Bhagavatam is the answer. So therefore we're hearing, and now we have to repeat and give them what they need in order to escape the shackles, the bondage of illusion. And only the members of the Krishna conscious movement can do it. It is not happening through any other process. No other process. We have to be convinced of that. If someone says, well, this is too hard, I think I'll become a Buddhist. That's unfortunate because we can understand that he'll not achieve the goal of human life by anything else besides becoming a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And we have to be convinced, and we have to be able to convince others. So, therefore, Padmanabhan Prabhu came here so that everyone gets advantage. As Bhakti Shastri, we should be well equipped to answer any question, any challenge, anything. Not that we become frustrated and remain on a second class situation. That we cannot defeat these baseless arguments. They're just all word jugglery. People talk about things, but when you examine the situation carefully, they have no knowledge. It's all based on dogma, some ingrained misconception, based on a misconception that, but that, anyway, we have the answer. So we have to be compassionate and deliver this information intact without adulteration. So any other? Deva Damodar. Yes, Prabhu. I must have said something wrong. David Damodar is going to chastise me.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, thank you for your nice lecture. Could you kind of help me understand this Charvita Charvananam, like pertaining to interpersonal relationships, right? So like not talking about sex, but like people have different experience with different people. So how is that chewing the truth? If like one person staying with another person, he feels happy, or another person staying with another, he feels not happy. So changing that situation, that person like naturally thinks I will be happier because he sees the experience and he knows that, staying with one person makes him happy, with another may be better. So like, how is that? And in our philosophy, it's also like it's personal philosophy. Like we cannot say like, okay, like all the people are the same, so we'll have the same experience with every other person. Well, it's not like that. So how to properly understand that?
Well, actually it is like that according to the Creator who made the same conditions that are experienced by every jiva. Whether he recognizes or acknowledges them, that's a different story. So depending on the level of illusion, one person will do something and think he's happy. And a person who's a little bit enlightened will realize that this endeavor will not bring me happiness, but only frustration, either now or in the future. They have, it's like people engage in so many health-related activities. And but we see that the ancient system of yoga is the best for all-around well-being, because it has its roots in actual knowledge. Whereas people now think that, well, if I can develop a big chest or big arms or big whatever, that is an ideal that will bring me happiness. And what's the culmination of happiness? It's called the selfie. People want to idealize themselves and to disseminate it to others. So this is not, just like we see, what is that? The peacock is very proud of his plumage. And it is even used to give some indication of persons who, what do they say? Strut like a peacock. They dress themselves in a certain way according to their self-image conception. And then they try to advertise it just the same. There's no different. The peacock is displaying his plumage to attract the female. So people who want to behave like that, everything is sex life in the material world. We understand that from the Bhagavatam. So although everyone's thinking that this person is different or that person is different, for preaching purposes, we can approach them through that individual conception. But for us, we should understand what is the basis for that misconception and why he's thinking that this will bring him happiness or whatever. If we want to really enlighten him, we should tell him that happiness and distress come of their own accord. At least that's what Prahlad Maharaj, who we accept as one of our Mahajans, that's what he said. Nobody wants to suffer, but suffering comes. Similarly, everyone wants happiness, but happiness also comes on its own accord. It may seem coincidentally that it's by my endeavor, but that is exactly what it is like. One person may work hard all his life and not accumulate anything. As a matter of fact, he'll be frustrated at every turn. He'll gain wealth, he'll lose it, he'll gain it, he'll lose it. And there's no, without understanding the law of karma, we cannot help them. We are the experts in this regard. So when a person comes and says, why did I lose everything? I was so happy. Why did I lose it? We can explain to him why he lost everything and why he didn't realize his dreams and his ambitions. It's because in your past situation, this was the case, whether you accept it or not. Piety, impiety, karma, good and bad, all these things are interrelated, and we can explain that to them as well. And if a person says, I am happy, we say, you're happy now, but what about others that you see suffering like this? Can your happiness give them happiness? Of course, there are people on the TV set who will tell you yes, and they're trying to do that. They're saying, yes, if you do exactly what I'm doing, I will make you a millionaire. It only costs you $19.99. And everything on the TV set is $19.99, in case you didn't know. Because that's a magic number that people have been programmed to think that is an acceptable risk. So everything is $19.99. Of course, once you get it, then you have to buy it again and again and again. But it starts off with the illusion that this will bring me happiness for $19.99. And if you act now, I will double the offer and give you 2. So there it is. You can get happiness for $19.99. Do you have any more questions, or should we continue with Dr. Henrik?
No, but what do we reply to some people who are not saying that, like, okay, like by the endeavor, but they say, okay, but this is the result of the poor choices or the good choices. It's like, if you're
What?
smart, you're making good choices. If you're not, or you've been conditioned, you've been like brought up, or within your sphere of friends, you've been led to make bad choices, then you suffer. But then if you just make good choices, then you will be happy.
Well,
You will prosper.
we accept that. If you make good choices, you'll get good results, but they have to be educated. Their good choices are all based on their material conceptions. Do they have they ever considered spiritual life? We have a nice little pamphlet just for you. And if you read it, it may answer these questions. Prabhupada said, don't engage more than 3 minutes. Says it's not, they have to read the book. When they come to the temple, we can engage more. We don't mind. Sit down and we can discuss, and hopefully in this environment, their questions will come out. They're real questions. They're real concerns, not the ones they show out externally. Many people just hide their true nature. They want you to think they're happy. They want you to think that, everything will be better by engaging in a certain way or under certain circumstances. But the only real guarantee is to have access to real knowledge to get a real solution, a permanent solution. And anyone will accept that. Everyone's looking for a permanent solution, but it's not possible in the material world. Everyone wants to be happy always. But you can ask a person, are you always happy? If they tell you yes, they're lying. But, some people will lie. Some people will
But
lie.
most of the people say, well, no one is always happy. So it's like idealistic. It's kind of because getting a little bit.
So everyone here is just mentally broken. Everyone is bipolar, like you said in your lecture.
Everyone is bipolar if has any tinge of material attachment left. Because real mentality, real thinking, real existence, real intelligence has to be on the Shuddha Sattva, because Shuddha Sattva is unadulterated. But of course, we're not there. So as long as we're not there, we're to that degree, we're bipolar. But our bipolar is easily controlled by attending the morning program, chanting our prescribed number of rounds, because it's like when you go to a situation, they give you a certain medicine, a certain treatment. So we have our treatment. We understand that by chanting these 16 rounds, this is called the Shodalai. This is the expert. This is the medicine that cures the material disease. So we're very fortunate. We're in the right place to have the correct cure. And we want to share it with others as much as possible. Because yes, Prabhupada said, everyone in the material world is more or less crazy. Everyone in the material world. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Sri Shivara Govindadev ki, Sri Narasingha Tattvadasi ki. And it's a good day to chant the Shringa Kabachas, so that prayer by Lord, by Saturn, Shani Dev. And if you go to the website, the TOVP website, they have the flip book for the Shringa Stuti. So everybody knows what to do? Everybody knows what to clean? Very good. Hare Krishna. How are you? Where's the rest of them? They'll come later?